yeah, I'm growing more confident. So that's all.
Chelsea, Mr. Chairman, can I respond to Chelsea?
Certainly.
This doesn't set a precedent for any other site in Danvers. This particular site has its own unique circumstances, and in this case, as the people that went on the site visit saw, this area here was naturally vegetated, unlike other lots that are in the the Woodville subdivision that tend to, right after the back fence, they drop down almost like a cliff. This had a nice gradual slope that was naturally vegetated, and none of that vegetation is being disturbed at all. There will be additional native evergreens installed along the house side of the fence here. So we're actually enhancing that buffer. So if you consider that this is almost a dead flat backyard, it has an undisturbed, naturally vegetated strip, and this is an above ground pool with minimal site preparation needed, I think those facts relevant to this particular site are what you should consider, and not how someone else might interpret it for their particular project.
Okay, Chelsea, anything else?
No, that was it.
All right, Bill and Sandra, it looks like it's close. You want to reconsider, or do you want to take your chances on the plan as proposed?
Sandra, are you on here this evening?
I think she may have been muted. So Sandra, if you want to try to unmute your phone.
Sandra, are you on this evening?
She was there earlier, Bill, because I heard her say she was here.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, Sandra. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The only thing that I wanted to add to what Bill Manuel was saying is that, and I'd like for you to seriously consider this. I know that you have your reservations with respect to any damage to the property, to the land, but my whole entire house is on conservation land, and I would hope that the conservation board would consider that there's no area on my property that is not conservation land, and that I would hope that you would consider part of the work and the things that I want to add to my property as a hardship because of the fact that I have no land on my land that is not conservation. So, I mean, I would hope that that you would consider part of this as a hardship, and you may not think that a pool or moving the shed to a particular area on the property is a hardship, but when you have a small space like I do, and I'm trying to utilize it in the most appropriate way so that it preserves the land as well as me getting what I want out of my property, that you could consider that as well. When the three board members that went through the property, they saw that what is being proposed to this property made sense, and that's what I guess most of the people, out of the three that were there, said it made sense. Although one had a slight, is still on the fence about which way to go with respect to the pool and perhaps the shed. I wouldn't mind moving the shed just a bit, but I'd like to really respectfully ask the board to really consider that the property is not being damaged, that it's being preserved in the most natural state that it is, and that it will continue to be, and that one was suggested to pull the pool closer to the house, and you walk right into, you put a fence. As that person said, it's a matter of taste. I don't want to walk right into a pool and have to, open up a fence to get into that area. It would be, as the pool, the yard is already small enough that I don't want to walk right into something like that. I do have children, I have a dog, and so the way everything is laid out is so that the family can enjoy the property without making any disturbances or anything that would, cause any unnecessary harm to the property or to the land. So I'd like that for you to all consider that. And again, as I said, this is a hardship because no area on my property is not conservation land. So I don't have the ability to do anything else with the space that I have. And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Bill, one more quick question as I'm looking at the drawing. What is the blue line at the top of the drawing? Is that the edge of the?
Bill, you're muted. We had to mute you because we were going to. There you go.
So this is the bank resource area, this blue line. This is the 25 no disturb. This is the 35 no build, and this is the 100-foot buffer zone line.
Okay, now where is the fence on the back of the property? What I'm driving at, Bill, is I think your erosion control in the back is not going to be sufficient for the post holes for the fence.
Well, here, the yellow line is where we have the erosion control, and the fence posts are going to be dug with a post hole digger. So really, they're dug, the posts are set. Usually they throw some concrete in there, and then whatever isn't put back in the hole is just, taken away. So I don't know that we really need erosion control.
I'd like erosion control there, Bill. I mean, we all know when you dig a hole that all the dirt just doesn't always go where you want it. It's gonna, if it rains or someone kicks it or whatever, we want to keep everything out of that drainage area.
That would be fine. That's not a huge adjustment.
Okay. Okay, are there any comments from the public? Let me ask Dave first. Are there any emails?
We can get back to Dave, but I haven't seen any emails, so I think we're all set here.
Okay, are there any phone calls, Alicia?
There are no phone calls.
Is there anyone participating in the meeting that would like to comment?
Yes, good evening. This is Matthew Duggan, town meeting member in Precinct 1. So I have some questions and comments for three specific areas. The first is the stream, the second is the shed, and then the third would be the pool water discharge. So with the stream, this stream, this intermittent stream, the source comes from over on the other side of the rail trail on, I think it was Brookwood Drive, right? This is not Fishbrook that we're talking about, right? This is the stream that comes basically west to east. Is that something you can answer? Can you answer that or no?
I'm not prepared to answer that. I don't know.
Okay. Let me ask you about, and I ask you because Frostfish Brook is a multi-year, there's a multi-year project to harden the banks with riprap. So are the banks of this stream that at the top of the drawing, are the banks hardened?
Mr. Duggan, this is Bill Manuel. Normally we don't get involved in conversations between participants in the meeting, but you asked.
Well, this is a public hearing, sir, so I have the right to ask questions and make comments.
Of course you do, and but anyway, to answer your question about the stream, it is a tributary to Frostfish Brook, and the banks are not hardened on this reach of brook.
Okay. All right, that's fine. All right, let's move on to the shed. So on the shed, on this new layout, the shed is up here at the upper right-hand corner. So we talked about this at the last hearing. So what is the setback between that purple line at the very top and the yellow line, which I think denotes where the new fence will be? How far is the shed from the lot line at the top? At the rear lot line.
Bill, you're going to have to unmute each time because we get a lot of noise when you're not speaking and other people are. There you go.
It's 10 feet from the rear lot line.
Okay, I think I heard you say 10 feet. So on table 2 of the zoning bylaws, the table of dimensional requirements, in R2, the setback is 15 feet. So that is, you would have to go to the ZBA to get a variance to be able to move that shed closer to the property line, the rear setback. And then finally on the pool water, I heard that the chair mentioned that he did not want to see the pool water discharged into that intermittent stream. So then I heard an alternative method to get rid of the pool water, and that would be to pipe it out to the street. So in Danvers, or actually in Massachusetts, it's illegal to discharge chlorinated pool water into a storm drain. So you would be forced to maintain that, either treat the water and allow the chlorine to dissipate, or you would need to just dump it onto the yard, onto your grass, which is really the only choice I see here. And then one last thing in closing, and just from a general comment that I've heard several times, is that, you know, this needs to be allowed because other properties in the area already have pools that are, sounds like they're in violation. So rather than make something more detrimental, those other properties should also be investigated to see if they were built under this type of scrutiny. And also the applicant, I just heard the applicant say that this property is conservation land. That's not true. This is not conservation land. The reason that we're discussing this project or this application is because of its potential impact to the wetlands, not the property itself, not the land that the building is on. It's about the wetlands, right? The runoff into the stream that goes to Frostfish Brook and then down to the Porter River. And we know that the Porter River is in decline, that less fresh water is making it down into the Porter River, and the brackish water is moving upstream and significantly altering the biodiversity of the river. So these projects in isolation look like they're minor things, but in totality, they have a significant impact. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
All right, I just want to make a couple comments, Matt. The first one on the allowing this because the neighbors have it, that is not forcing our hand, that is at our discretion. The second point is the water will be unchlorinated because it has to stand for like 2 or 3 days, and then the chlorine dissipates. So we're just discharging fresh water to these storm drains. The third is we're trying to set conditions where no runoff from this particular project is making it into the stream because we don't want any erosion. And the fourth is, I think the homeowner said she was on conservation land. I think there's just a matter of semantics. I think is what she's saying is that her whole property lies in our jurisdiction, the 100-foot jurisdiction.
Yeah, and I think I understood that. I think that's what she was trying to convey. So I just wanted to, for clarification for anyone that may have been watching this from home or whatever, to understand the differentiation between those two terms. All right,
Okay.
thank you, sir.
That being said, you're welcome. So George, a quick question. We lost her. Do we, before I ask for motions, do we have to vote on two waivers, one for the 35 and one for the 25, or just one for the 25?
Both waivers, because he is proposing structures within the 35.
Okay, and do we need to close the hearing first or after?
Close hearing.
Okay, so I guess, does anyone else have any comment before I move to, or I ask someone to move to close the hearing?
I just, oh, is there somebody else? I'll just go quickly. So just in terms of the shed, the reason I brought it up, just to touch on something Bill said earlier, I agree that the place you have it located now is grass, and moving it a few feet forward is also grass, but it's kind of for the same reason that we were very concerned about the idea of pulling out the stumps of the overgrown shrubs and instead wanting to grind them, because we don't want anything to undermine the bank. It's kind of the highest point right there before it starts sloping off. Like on the backside of the fence, although the slope isn't right on the backside of the fence, it's where it kind of gets started. So it's more so the weight and the structure kind of at the top near the break in the slope, rather than it being on what it's on, like a grassy area. I agree that whole corner is grass. It's just bringing the weight of something fairly heavy further away from the break in the slope.
And just to add to that, Vanessa and Bill, Matt made a good point on your setback requirements. That's something you have to be aware of before you go for a building permit. And if you want to want to be within the setback, you would have to go to the ZBA. Are there any other questions from the board, comments? Okay, someone willing to make a motion that we close the hearing for 41 in North Belgian Road, please?
I'll make a motion that we close the hearing for 41 North Belgian Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of closing the hearing for 41 North Belgian Way? For the members, Vanessa,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes. Aye.
Ann,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
and Peter, yes. Okay, next we will vote to grant a waiver for some building of the deck or portions of the deck within the 35 no build zone. Is there a motion to grant that waiver?
I'll make the motion that we grant the waiver for building in the 35-foot zone for 41 North Belgian, Department file number 14-1350.
Has the motion been made? Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to poll the members. Just vote yes or no, whether we want to grant this waiver. Vanessa,
Yes.
Michael,
No.
Ann,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
and Peter, yes. Okay, so we grant the waiver for the 35. Now we need to vote on a waiver to allow this pool and the shed to be located within the 25 no disturb zone. Could I have a motion along those lines, please?
I'll make the motion that we grant a waiver for the work within the 25-foot zone for 41 North Belgium, Department File Number 14-1350.
The motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Vanessa?
Yes.
Michael?
No.
Anne?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Peter? Yes. Okay, now final vote on this is to grant a order of conditions for 41 North Belgian Way, DEP file number 14-1350. And whoever makes the motion, we will probably suggest conditions that go along with it. So just if someone makes that motion, we'll go from there.
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions for 41 North Belgian, DEP file number 14-1350. The conditions that I think we've mentioned so far is putting the erosion control behind where the fence is going to be installed rather than in front. I'd personally like to see the shed move forward. It seems like it might need to be done so anyways to comply with zoning setbacks, but I think it just needs to be a little bit further away from the break in the slope. And were there any other additional conditions?
To have the pool water discharged.
Yes, non-chlorinated pool water discharged.
To the front of the house.
Yes, away from the resource area.
Okay, Georgia, just a quick question. Are there any other conditions that we're missing?
I had those, but I also wanted to clarify if you want to just condition that staff could make the determination if the shed is placed appropriately far enough away from that break in the bank. Just, it's hard to put in the order, move it away from the break and not having like an appropriate number. So if that's something the commission's comfortable with me determining in the field with the applicant, I'm happy to do that.
I'm comfortable with that.
Can I ask a question on that? Is how can we vote to have the shed closer than what the zoning allows without them first going for relief for the zoning? I don't see it. I mean, I think either the shed should be pulled back at least to where it's legal. Then go ahead.
I would say the commission could approve the plan as it is, but ultimately it's up to the building inspector to issue that permit for that. And if it's not according to where it should be, he's going to require it to go somewhere else. But in that, now saying that, Mike, if it does need to be moved, that would be the appropriate place if it's further from the break.
You comfortable with that, Mike?
Well, I mean, at least the person making the motion has suggested it be moved. I mean, maybe the suggestion that it be moved 5 more feet so that they don't have to go to the zoning board of appeals, because I think one of the things we had that meeting at the junior high school was to say that there was more interaction between the various boards, and I noticed in one of the matters we have tonight was where a building permit was issued for work which would not have been allowed by the Conservation Commission,
Right.
and it's a communication issue. So why are we allowing a shed 10 feet away when we know zoning requires it to be 15 feet away?
Mr. Chair?
So
go ahead, David.
Hi, thanks. Mr. Splain, just to be clear, the shed, I'm not sure exactly what size the shed is. Guessing it's fairly small, but if it's less than 10 by 12 or 120 square feet, the zoning in town allows it to be closer to the lot line than otherwise accessory structures or buildings would be. So I think the rule is that, by rule, I mean it's in the bylaw, but the building inspector has a sheet that he has online. I think if it's less than 120 square feet and less than 10 feet tall, it can be closer to the lot line. I think up to 5 feet, don't quote me on that. So they may be okay with the shed, but your point's well taken in that if the shed needs to be moved, it needs to comply with zoning. But I think in this case, they might be okay.
Does Bill Manuel know? Is 120 square feet or less, Bill?
I have it right here if you want me to read it, or if you're clarifying what the shed is.
The shed is 96 square feet.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, David.
Vanessa, just a suggestion on your motion that we just say that the shed is moved to within the limits of zoning. We leave it at that.
Okay, so, but I think based on what David just said, that if it is under 120 square feet and it's okay where it is, I still want it further away.
Okay, then just give us a number then.
I mean, I like the idea of 5 feet. It's hard to know on this plan. I mean, I think maybe Bill can clarify where that dashed line is. That's kind of right behind the orange oval. That's the pool. I think it's the offset line. Is that about 5 feet away from where the shed is now? The back of the shed, Bill, do you know?
Where my cursor is now is about 6 feet from
No, I
the
think,
face
Bill,
of the shed here.
where the arrow to the shed is, there's like a dashed line just underneath the bushes. Right
Yeah.
there.
Yep. That's the zoning setback line, but it's not for these accessory sheds.
Okay, but I think Vanessa's saying just for, preservation of the bank, that we would like to have it set, brought in to that line.
To have the shed in here?
No, to just bring it forward up to the back of the shed is down that dashed line.
I see. I understand now. I think that would be reasonable. Sandra, do you have any comment?
Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Yep. Hello?
Hi. So what's the feet that's proposed to bring it forward 5? Is that what was said?
To bring it to this line would be 5 feet.
I'm not looking at the map, at the plan that you're looking at. But I mean, I did want to make a suggestion since, and I'm not sure who's the one that's proposing it to be brought forward a little, and that's fine. But could we consider doing, since the shed is smaller than what is allowable by what was being said a little bit earlier, since it's smaller than that size, can we bring it forward 3 feet instead of 5 feet? Only because part of the addition of the house is on that side. I'm just curious if that's something that could be considered. If not, then I guess the 5, I would be amenable to that.
Or you could consider putting it on the other side of the property where you're not nearly, your addition is not as big. But on that same line.
Oh, that doesn't work.
So are we at the 5 feet, moving it 5 feet?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, did I hear Sandra say she was comfortable with that, Bill?
Sandra said she was hoping for 3, and I just want to point out that as it stands where it's proposed right now, there's only 15 feet in between the addition and the face of that shed. So moving it 5 feet forward, now you're only 10 feet away from the outside of your addition, your windows and such. So, in this case, because the backyard is so small, feet really matter. So if we could settle on 3 feet instead of 5, that would be better.
We're trying to work with the applicant, and I think, I don't know, it seems like there's not a lot of give. They're getting the pool where they want it. The suggestion by Vanessa is very reasonable because of the nature of the bank to move it to 5 feet. I don't see the problem.
Okay, then I'll agree to the 5 feet.
Okay, good. All right. Vanessa, is that suit your motion?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion's been made to grant an order of conditions. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and we have all the conditions that we had asked, right, Georgia?
Chlorine issue, no, yes, I'm sorry, do we have the issue of not discharging chlorinated water into the storm drain?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second to the motion, please?
I already seconded.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry.
I did.
Okay, just poll the members, yes or no, please. Vanessa,
Yes.
Michael,
Yeah, because the board has the majority has agreed to the waivers, then I feel I should go along with the project, especially when they're willing now to move the shed to 5 feet, so yes.
okay. Anne
Yes.
and Chelsea
Yes.
and Peter, yes. Okay, so you're all set, Bill and Sandra. Good luck.
Thank you.
And just be in touch with Georgia to you know, the inspections that she has to make as the project moves along.
Correct.
Okay, next up on our agenda is a notice of intent for 23 Congress Ave, DEP file number 14-13. But I guess there is no DEP finish number. Is that correct, Georgia?
Correct. One hasn't been received
Okay.
as of yet.
So we're only going to be able to just talk in generalities here. We won't be able to vote on anything this evening without a DEP number. Georgia, do you want to give us a quick 2-sentence overview, and then we'll turn it over to Bob and Ryan, and they can just show us their presentation?
Of course, thank you. So for background on this project in particular, it's a little backwards in that we received the notice of intent filing, what we kind of call after the fact. There was, like I had noted in the memo, a miscommunication with the building department in which they issued the building permit. And so the applicant went ahead and started building. When that was discovered by our department, we had asked Mr. Livermore to stop work, put up erosion controls, and file a notice of intent, and hire a professional consultant to do a plan. So he has done that. The photos I provided in the memo show the work that has been done to date. So mainly the photos you're seeing are one of the additions that the applicant is proposing. And I'm sure Bob can give more overview on the work that has been done, but there has been, I think, 9 of the helical piles installed. Does that give some background, or did the commission have any other questions?
Anybody with questions, just go ahead. Otherwise, we'll just turn it over to Mr. Griffin. No? Okay, Mr. Griffin, just go ahead and show us just what the project entails, please.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen, and sometimes it works good, and sometimes I struggle with this, but we're gonna try anyway. So, you see the big blue box?
Yes, we do.
Oh, thank goodness! All right, this works about 70% of the time. Anyways. All right, so Mr. Stasio and his wife live at 23 Congress Street, and I just got a couple of sort of to get us on the Locust Street. Congress Street is sort of, you know, between the two Danvers Port driveways. So here's Elliott Street, and there's the driveway going down to the yacht club here, and the driveway going into the function hall here, and here's Congress Street in the middle. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So there's Mr.
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Bob?
Okay.
Bob, I'd like to interrupt for 1 second, please.
Yes.
You mentioned the name Stasio as the owners, and I'm seeing that the Livermores are the owners.
Yeah, Mr. Livermore is a contractor hired by the Stasios, so there's just a mix-up, I think. But
Okay,
Mr. and
good.
Mrs.
Thank you.
Stasio own the property, and it's this number 23 here. And so they have this sort of L shape, or I don't know, it's not exactly a pork chop, but dog leg perhaps shaped lot here for Congress Avenue. And then there's a paper street that runs next to their property here, which I think is called Broughton on some plans. Is that Border Street? I'm sorry, Border Street is this paper street here. I'm going to show you next the flood zone map of the property here. So this is the FEMA map, and the dot is at the location of the 23 Congress Street. And you can see that there's an elevation 10 contour that sets the 100-year flood elevation. And that, as you'll see when I show my topographic plan, comes very close to the proposed building addition and his existing building. Here's an aerial view of the property. This is taken from Mass DOT's database. Here's the Stasio residence here, a little walkway, a driveway, and a garage. The garage is actually located on that paper street. The building was built, we think, approximately 1920. There was the rear building addition was put on approximately 1960. So it's been around for a while. It's certainly a pre-1997 lot. It is within the riverfront zone. This is a view from the opposite direction. So here's, this is often referred to, I think, as Millet Creek, but you go a short distance and you're in the Porter River. Here's the Stasio residence here with a small deck off the back here, and mostly salt marsh between the mean high water line here and the property. So we did a survey here, and this is our site plan at 1 inch equals 20, and I'm going to zoom in because this is hard to see. But you can see here's the Stasio residence here, this area that I'm circling with my mouse. There's the garage, which is again in the right of way, and the driveway is also in the private way here. So the Stasios are proposing 2 building additions. This one here is approximately 8.5 by 14 feet, and it's at the second story of the building. So the first story is underneath this. This is really a vertical extension. There's might be a small little extension in the rear, but there's no new foundation work required for the second story building addition here. On the right side of the building, which is the east side of the building, this building addition is approximately 13 feet wide and approximately 32 feet long. And this is a 1-story building addition, and it is supported by helical piles and the existing building. So, George is right. There was a little mix-up on the permitting aspects here. The Stasios had to get zoning board approval for this project, which they got in August. They went to the zoning board meeting. They got approved. The decision was filed. They waited the requisite number of days. The building permit application was filed and then approved. And so Mr. Livermore went out and installed the foundation that we'll see in the pictures here without realizing that this project had to wait for an order of conditions. So that's why we're here, and it's just an honest mistake. Nobody's trying to get away with anything here. So here's the crushed stone area with those helical piles. You can see in a line here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm sorry. This is behind that crushed stone area. Here's another view of the crushed stone area. You can see the erosion controls have been installed as requested, and these little guys that are sticking up here are helical piles. So this is a steel shaft, usually around 2 inches in diameter, or sometimes 2 inch by 2 inch square. There's some helical flights that are on these things, and they're just augured into the ground. And as it's augured in, the machine can sense the resistance, and when it hits adequate resistance, some shear pins in the driving mechanism shear off, and it stops. And then that's where you basically cut the pile off, and you put this cap on it. The cap will then receive some pressure treated wood, which is the foundation of the building. So what you see here is pretty much ready to go for carpentry. The extent of earthwork that's required for this project is not much, and it was completed in that couple of days stretch when the building permit was active. You can see that there's some wires coming down into the building here, and this is again is a 1-story building addition, so we're going to have to move those wires a little bit and move this downspout. But basically, everything that happens for the addition is all above grade at this point in time. Here's another view from the riverside looking back towards the street at the crushed stone area with the helical piles installed. So I'm going to bring the site plan back up. The wetland resources, we have, here's our mean high water line. We have a salt marsh in through here. And so we have a 25-foot no disturb zone. That's this line right there. The 35-foot no build zone is right here. And so you can see all of the work is outside the no build zone. The work is about 42 to 44 feet away from the salt marsh line at its closest point. The elevation 10 contour is this line right here. So as I mentioned, the building is just outside the elevation 10 contour, so it's just outside the flood zone in the land subject to coastal storm flowage. And then the 200-foot outer riparian line, so is right here. So of course, all of this land is within the riverfront area. And I think when you look at the site plan, it's pretty obvious that the building addition has been located as far from the river as possible. You can see this dashed line here is the zoning setback line. This obviously is beyond the zoning setback line, but they got relief in order to construct that. And given the constraints posed by the existing house, by the narrow shape of the lot, this was really the only location to put a building addition. It's a pretty modest addition. As I mentioned, it's only 1 story and doesn't require a whole lot of earthwork because of these somewhat innovative helical piles that were used. And so with that, I'm ready for questions. I can leave this site plan up, or we can go back to the Hollywood Squares look if you'd rather, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, we can just leave that there. I just have a quick question on why these piles instead of a typical foundation?
Yeah, so helical piles probably weren't being used anywhere around here 5 years ago. I started seeing them in some home building magazines, and you have a relatively lightly loaded structure here. Again, 1 story, 14 feet wide, so half of the weight goes on the existing house, half of the weight goes on the new line of piles. It's a pretty light structure, and it's a pretty inexpensive way to get a foundation installed. The helical piles are frost resistant in that they're at least 4 feet down to the bottom of the piles. But you can see it's a way to get a structure in without a whole lot of earthwork and concrete work, obviously.
Or post hole digging.
Well, the post hole digger doesn't quite work in this. Remember, we have to auger the thing down, and it has to engage in the soil, these helical flights. And once they've engaged enough and they're providing enough resistance, then this driving mechanism, the shear mechanism, will actually shear. And then you'll know that you've gotten the helical pile in deep enough, and it's engaged with enough of the on-site soils to provide the resistance necessary to support the building. So it's not a post hole thing. It's probably, if you're familiar with like a Case 580, you would have a backhoe arm on the back of one of those things, and you can replace the bucket with the driving mechanism. It doesn't require a particularly large machine, but it does require a pretty good sized tractor type excavator backhoe machine to put these things in. Sometimes I've also seen them go in with a bobcat machine that's not a small bobcat, but perhaps a medium-sized bobcat.
Okay. Okay, that's the only real question I have. I mean, it seems like you're in good shape as far as our setback lines.
Right.
So I really have no further questions. I'm going to turn it over to the other members. So let me start with Mike.
Yeah, hi. I just had a question on the type of supports, the helical supports. How far down do they go, and do you have to come back and adjust for settling after that?
So I was not involved in actually driving these at this particular site, but I would tell you my experience is that generally these things go 6 to 8 feet. I've had them go 12 to 20 feet actually, and it's just you just keep driving them down until they engage to the adequate resistance. And then, as I mentioned, the driving mechanism shears off, and at that point, the backhoe gets removed from the shaft. And so what you do is you then cut the shaft at the proper elevation, and you put that cap on it. The cap has the U shape that that receives the pressure treated wood. So once you've achieved adequate resistance, you just cut it off, slap the cap on, and you're done.
Yeah, I was just curious, was our building department familiar with this type of process?
I don't know, and I do know that Mr. Livermore, the contractor that was involved in installing these things, is online. Perhaps he could answer some of these questions.
Yeah, we did review them with Rich Maloney ahead of time prior to installing them. He is aware of them.
All right. And he's in favor of them?
Yep, he's used them multiple times in the city, and he's aware of them. All the spec sheets were presented to him and installed as per Goliath Tech specs. So,
Thank you. I know it doesn't really directly relate to this, but I'd never seen these before, so thank you for that.
not a problem at all.
And the other place that you might see these things actually is foundation repairs are often repaired with a helical auger type of thing that's driven in next to the footing, and then the footing is jacked up and rests on these helical piles. So it's a technology that has been around for basement repairs for a long time, but I think using them for decks and small additions is something that it seems to be happening just more recently. Again, to me anyways, in the last 5 years or so.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, Ian, any questions or comments?
I'm just wondering about the construction itself in terms of where materials will be kept, and will they be kept far enough away from the our 35, 25, et cetera lines here in terms of once the construction starts for the additions here?
Right. So right now there is a dumpster in the driveway. And it still provides adequate room for Mr. and Mrs. Stasio to park their cars off street. And so I think the construction staging is going to happen primarily in the front yard. We obviously have got some erosion controls set up in the backyard. We don't want any activities beyond the erosion controls. And I think it's a convenient location, next to the driveway is relatively flat. They can drop construction materials there, and it's a short walk to the building area from that point.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All set, Ian?
Yep.
Chelsea?
Sorry, my computer froze. No, I don't have any questions. I think I'm all
Okay.
set.
Vanessa?
I just have one question. Bob, could you go back to the photo right before the plan? Thank you. I was just curious about all the crushed stone here, because it seemed like the crushed stone was going in the area of the addition, but it also seems like it's beyond the erosion control, and I'm just wondering why it's also in this front area by the deck.
So Mr. Stasio told me that they used to have crushed stone in this area anyways, and I think it just got top dressed with the new crushed stone when the foundation work was happening, but there's no construction proposed down in this particular area here.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have anything else at this time.
Okay. That being said, are there any comments from the public? Dave?
Mr. Chair, there's no email.
Any phone calls, Alicia?
No phone calls.
Okay, is there anyone listening in directly that would like to make a comment? Hearing none. Like I said earlier, we do not have a DEP file number for this, so we can't really issue an order of conditions. So all we're going to be able to do right now is to continue to our 12:10 meeting.
Okay.
So if someone can make a motion to that effect, we'll proceed from there.
Before that, Mr. Chair, could I just ask, Vanessa brought up a point with the crushed stone. Does the applicant know, does the crushed stone extend into the area of no build and no disturb?
Well, it looks like, I'm looking at the edge of the deck here. From that photograph, it looks like it goes a few feet beyond the edge of the deck. Here's the edge of the deck. And so if I go back to the site plan, you can see there's the deck there. And so it looks like the crushed stone might be going into the no build zone a little bit, but it's certainly not going into the no disturb zone. But I think we can get that area raked up and neatened up between now and December 10th, if that's
Get that out of there.
Sure.
That would be good.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, is someone willing to make a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion.
I
that we
move-
can-
Fine.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'll move we continue the public hearing to our next scheduled meeting. I think it's December 10th, so that we by then the applicant should have a number, a DEP number.
Okay, the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, the vote on this then, Vanessa,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
and Peter, yeah. We'll look forward to seeing you on 12/10.
Thank you very much, everyone. Stay healthy, and we'll see you all then.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.
Next up is a notice of intent for 18 Congress Avenue and 11 Harvard Avenue. Not quite sure, but this has also been continued to December the 10th. Next up is I need a motion to open the public hearing to discuss our wetlands bylaw regulation updates.
Do we have to close the last one?
No, we just voted to continue it.
Okay, all right. So what are we doing here?
So now to discuss the regulations, we need to open a public hearing.
Oh. I move that we open the public hearing for the wetland regulation updates.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
I'll second the motion.
All right. So with all the motions and the seconds, I think we're ready to vote. So, yes or no, Vanessa?
This is a vote to open the hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes, sorry.
Michael?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Okay, and Peter, yes. Okay, so I'm sure everyone's aware that the vote passed the town meeting to amend the wetlands bylaw. So now I guess the teeth of that change is in the regulations, and that's what we're here to discuss tonight. With that brief overview, I'm going to turn it over to Georgia, and she could just add whatever else she feels is appropriate, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to share my screen. Just let me know what you guys can see. Keep it short. Can everyone see?
Yeah.
The screen?
Yes.
So like Peter had said, I think this is our third conversation on the regs, but we've kind of been talking about them as we've been talking about the bylaw updates. So Peter had said those bylaw was adopted on the 26th. There is a small wait period in which we have to wait for the Attorney General to review that language and approve that. That average takes anywhere from about 3 weeks to 90 days. So once we get that official confirmation from the Attorney General back, that's when the new bylaw will be implemented on projects that are submitted after that. So I just wanted to clarify for the commission where that stands. As for the regulations, again, that's the statutes that we adopt locally with just the commission, doesn't need town meeting approval. And the last big overhaul I think the commission did was in 2003, and that's when they changed the fees. So there really hasn't been much updates to the regs since I think 1999 when they were adopted. So what we've reviewed so far, I've put up here, adding our additional performance standards, the coastal docks and piers, our new buffer zones, as well as now protecting vernal pools, isolated wetlands. We've updated our definitions. We now have more in-depth waiver requirements and triggers that require alternative analyses. And we've also added a waiver request form, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then just our general stuff has been updated to really reflect, 2020 modern times, talking about electronic copies, how many copies, and that's in the filing procedures. So really the three kind of big points that we said at the last meeting that needed to be discussed was the fee schedule changes, if anyone had a chance to look at those. And then that remainder, finding the inch requirement for floats. I had noted in the memo staff is suggesting 18. That's what I kind of put in there for now as a placeholder, but I think it would be good for the commission to make that final choice and vote on that when this is fully adopted. And then submission requirements, the appendix A and B, those are finalized and were included in your packet. So does anyone have any questions before? I was going to jump in to just give a quick overview on the fee schedule changes.
Just a quick general question, Georgia. Will these changes that we vote on tonight, so the Attorney General rules on the bylaw change before they go into effect?
Say that, sorry, Peter, you broke up a little bit. Do you mind saying that one more time?
Do these regulation changes, do they have to wait for the Attorney General's approval of the bylaw change?
No, I would say town meeting voted to approve that. And I would also say it's very unlikely the Attorney General is going to have edits to that bylaw. So it's in the best interest for the commission to adopt these, like we had said. Probably we wanted by the 12th, but of course now we know we have a little bit more time and we did schedule that special hearing. So if there were edits to any of things tonight, that would give us a couple days to update that and then have our full kind of finished, ready to go by the 19th.
Okay.
All right. So I was going to jump into just overviewing these updated fee amounts that I added in the packet. Some members may have been here in 2016 when we talked about updating our fees then, and that nothing really came about of that. And I think this is a perfect time to do it. These were the suggested fees David and I had kind of talked about, really based on other towns. I put in a fee comparison chart, just what we see from other towns. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So if you guys saw this, you can really see where our new fee, those proposed numbers really came from. And again, we hadn't updated since I think the late 90s, 99 or early 2000s. So a lot of these fees definitely needed to be updated. And I do want to note, in addition to changing the actual fee number, we've also kind of explored different options for encouraging applicants to kind of have a complete process and a complete timeline. So in that, you'll see our certificate of compliance, we were charging 50. We're finding the average now is about 100, and that seems appropriate. And we incentivize people here that if you were to come back before your permit expires and close it out, it's going to be 100. If you come back with an expired order to close out, 10 years down the line, 4 years down the line, it's going to be $100 extra. So we've seen other towns do that. We hope it encourages people to follow the deadline on their applications and have our permits closed out. Similar to amendments, we've changed this. It used to be every request was 100. So we've changed that now to every time you're requesting an amendment to your plan, it's going to be increased. And we hope in that what you originally proposed really should be that final buttoned up product. So we want to prevent people from coming back and back and back and making changes. Any questions on the fee updates? Mike, you're muted.
Yeah.
There you go.
I just had a question on what's the relationship between the fee and the purpose of it? Is to cover certain expenses, or in other words, how do you arrive at the numbers other than seeing what other towns are doing?
That's a great question, and I'll let David jump in too, but we had talked about, the staff hours that are now dedicated to the permit review. I think that has definitely changed. So you can see the minor project permit, that's not something we had before. That's a new fee we had to make up. And we equated $100. That seems appropriate with the added staff time we now have to do for permit review, site visits. And I think that can be applied to really every section in here, the amount of review that is required. It seemed necessary for us to update that.
So it's somewhat tied into the expenses incurred in planning to recoup some of those costs. Yeah.
David,
Yeah,
do you agree with that?
should.
Yeah, I would agree with what Georgia said, and additionally, too, yeah, it covers the costs, and also we're doing a much more extensive field review, I think, than we have in the past, particularly Georgia and the others in my department, and we're going to do that going forward as well. So I agree.
Does that impact, David, does that impact, we talk about in projects where we want the applicant to hire an expert for us? That's not going to be part of a fee schedule or anything, or any limit on that?
That's a great question. So it doesn't limit it. It doesn't put a cap on anything. We'd be doing the review at the staff level anyway. So this fee cost is like the minimal cost to cover us going out into the field, reviewing the plans, writing the analysis, and drafting it up. The peer review cost could be something else entirely. And generally, we'd see that on larger projects, but it doesn't always have to be. But a lot of what we're seeing for peer review lately would have to do with stormwater coverage or very unique situations. So as you know, Mr. Splain.
All right, thank you. Yeah. That's all.
Georgia, one quick question.
Yes.
I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. The after the fact filing, is that similar to the situation we just had where someone comes in and they've done some work before they got their permits?
I will say that one is a little bit different in that there was some work with the town already, but I would say an after the fact filing is, a full blown, they've done full work, no stop. There is a little bit of interpretation to after the fact filings, but that's what that situation would be most likely. Yeah.
So that would be like the one that we had on Route 1 that was like the
dog park.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. If that work never filed yes, that's a perfect example.
Okay, and do you think twice the application fee is sufficient for that? I would think that it'd be even higher.
Say that one more time. You think 500 is good or should be higher?
Well, if it's just a regular notice of intent and application is what? I'm just looking for it here. Well, I guess depends on the categories. I guess, well, yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking that, there's got to be significant consequences for doing work without having a permission.
You know what? Now that you bring that up, Peter, I think Dave and I had actually discussed this and had talked about being at a percentage of what the notice of intent fees would be and multiplying that. So after the fact, I think our previous one, apologies, hold on. We could say 200% of the notice of intent fee. So if you were to file your notice of intent as originally you're supposed to, say that's $200, we would require $400. So we could double the project costs if that's something the commission feels is a little bit more restrictive than just a flat 500.
And now just, forgive me for not asking this question sooner, but what are the different categories for the notice of intent?
Yes. I have them right here. I had a feeling that may come up. So usually what we do see is category 1, that's work on a single family home. So that's adding an addition, a pool, a shed. That's our typical, what we saw tonight. Both of those would be category 1 projects. Category 2, that's going to be a full, new construction of a home. And then there's other categories that fall in that. I'm going to read a little bit, parking lots, driveway crossings for single family homes. So there are certain triggers for each category. Category 3 is when you get a little bit bigger, it's site preparation. So that would be for your much larger projects, subdevelopments, road construction, hazardous cleanup, water supply development. And then category 4, those are bridges, dredging, airport, tree clearing, hazardous oil. And then category 5 and 6, those are based on linear square feet. And David, I'm not sure if you have much experience with categories 5 and category 5, it does note that's when you work on docks and piers. The category 6 is one we don't get too often. I think that's when projects get much larger. And it does require portions of delineations. David, do you have experience with category 6? I'm putting you on the dot here, but.
No, it's okay to put me on the spot. I don't have any experience with Category 6. That sounds like worst case
Where-
hurricane.
Where would something like the Whipple Hill project, where would that be?
So I would have to, depending on how they did, so it would probably be Category 3, which is a new road construction, and then each individual house would be a Category 2.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay, good.
Yeah, I have another question on category 5. What is the linear foot? I mean, what are we measuring when we talk about the linear foot versus, say, a square footage formula?
That's a good question. So it sounds like a lot of the categories that fall into this are mainly linear projects. So the docks and piers, those are going to have more linear. I mean, they are going to have square footage, but it goes by linear foot. That's how the DEP measures it. Did that answer your question, Mike?
What, like roads as well?
Well, so no, so that the linear foot, when we charge by linear foot, that only knocks in when you get to Category 5. And a lot of those projects are really only, like it says here, docks, piers, and dikes, coastal or inland. So that's where they're more concerned with linear impact as opposed to square footage impact.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else on the fees?
Yeah, I was just going to mention between the amendment after the fact and the after the fact filing. Like you said, for Category 1, if it's $100, that if you amended it after the fact, it's a $500 charge. But if you never filed to begin with, then it's only $200. So I think maybe getting those more in line with each other.
Yeah. David and I, we can work on updating those numbers, and we'll have, I'll send that out with the updates we have tonight, so you guys can review that. Great. Okay.
This is Matt. Can I jump in and ask a question before you move on?
Is that okay with you, Mr. Chair? I just want to make sure.
Certainly, go ahead.
All right, Matt.
So it sounds like you did a lot of work on this. Are these fees? I don't know how much they've increased. I think probably not too much. I don't see the fees in the existing bylaws, but
Here, Matt, I can pull them up for you. I apologize for not doing a comparison side by side.
No, that's all right. My question is, did you reach out to nearby towns to see what their fees are? Are we kind of in the same ballpark as what other towns are charging?
So that's a great question, Matt, and I can pull the, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So this shows, again, this is not that recent, I would say within the past 2 to 3 years. So I pulled all the fees from the other towns and did just a comparison. So on average, Danvers is under when we compare to Beverly, North Andover, Manchester, Reading. Our fees were really, in some cases we matched other towns, but there were definitely options where we were way under what we could be requiring, what we see required. I don't know if you can see that, Matt.
Yeah, I can see that. That's kind of what I was asking, because we want, is the purpose of these fees to kind of cover our costs in terms of man hours? Because some of these projects, they profit wise, it's like in the millions of dollars sometimes. So why should we give away our time? It's basically, the taxpayers are subsidizing what's required of the developer or the applicant. So we want to see kind of not make it profit driven, sort of like the way the building the code administration is, permits. We don't need to go that far, but we should at least try to cover our costs, and get our fair share of what it costs to provide this service.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, so I think on the fees, we got the feedback we needed on the fees. So everyone will see in the packet, I actually just added this today. I've compiled all we had section by section listed in the memo packet, so I've compiled it all, added a cover page. I would say, accept any comments the commission has of any review you guys do before the 19th. The bylaws really, I mean, the regulations are really at 90%. I think there's definitely some formatting I need to do. I know I have some spacing and periods and commas that need to be added. But I would suggest that the commission's more than welcome to use this as the guiding master final document. If you did want to print it out, sit down and review, or just look at a couple sections. So the second portion I had on my list was for the commission to talk about the 18 inches that we have in section 4 for our additional resource areas protected under the bylaw or supplemental performance standards. So I know we've talked about it a little bit at each meeting. We've had these discussions, and I think we've talked about it a lot as each project comes up. So before the commission, before we finalize the regulations, I think it would be good for the commission to discuss and determine a number that they felt comfortable with.
You mean doing that tonight, or?
Well, I will say it would be good to be tonight if you guys want to have that discussion, or at least it should be determined before the 19th if the commission's going to be looking to, you know, adopt those regulations at the next special meeting.
This is the minimum of we had a regulation when you had originally, we were looking at a lot of these piers and you sent around some proposed standards, and the 18 was the minimum of, I forget, it was like 18 to 36 perhaps.
Right, yeah.
And on the coastal regs. And how did we get back to the minimum?
That's a great question, Mike.
Can I just make a comment for you there, Georgia? Just Mike, in her verbiage there, that paragraph at the bottom, we were thinking that the 18 inches would be the minimum for a float, irregardless if it's a clam habitat or not. Then, you know, what we had before, the 2 instances we went before, we were over clam habitat, and I think that's what we voted on, the 22 inch. Did I paraphrase for you sufficiently, Georgia?
A little bit, I think so. And I see what Mike is saying, because, you know, the last discussion we had said 18 to 22, and Peter, you had just noted that, you know, we have the 18, implementing that bottom number 18 would apply to every pier and float project, regardless of shellfish or not. And I think, and that's always been the standard the commission has required. And that's usually what we put in the order. And once we do that, that's really the last time we see from the applicant. And so we don't have sufficient evidence, one, that people can realistically achieve 18, and we haven't had in the past any mechanisms to make them do it. You know, a lot of the times we hear, well, the mud's so high, it's not going to work. Well, so in this instance, we believe if we require the 18, but then also put in the inspection requirements and proof that 18 inches is met and it's maintained, if we can see that from applicants over time, then down the line, the commission can adopt something higher, and because we know that it can be achieved. And I also wanted to note, the commission had asked me to reach out to Department of Marine Fisheries about, you know, the number, why they pick 18, why is it higher over shellfish? And she really, Tay had said, you know, there's not a magic number. There's not a number that's better than another. Of course, I think higher is better, but it's also in terms of being realistic in the environment that we do have in the rivers of Danvers. I think it would be a really great feat if we could have all our future docks hold anything above low tide and hold it strong and have it maintained for a couple of years and having that continually inspected. And I had also noted that keeping 18 with the option to change it in the future after DMF issues, it sounds like they're working on a small docks and pier guideline. We have one from the DEP that we've had for years, I think since early 2005, 2008. But this is exciting in that Department of Marine Fisheries is putting out their own. And in that, there's going to be a lot more performance standards for shellfish habitat land under waterways. And I think with that, that will give the commission more standing and I think data support to support a higher number. I know I kind of just spieled a lot, but it was really to sum up what Tay had said and really what staff was thinking as to why I don't think it's a bad thing to looking at it like we're reverting back to a lower number. I think it's now we're really going to implement the number we've been requiring and regulate it better with our standards. Whew, did that make sense? I apologize.
You should have just stuck with my 2 sentences,
I
Georgia.
really should, because I really want I want to give you too much information, but sometimes that can be harmful. So any thoughts from the commission on that?
Well, you got mine earlier.
Yes. You're more than welcome to share those. I think that's great.
Well, I liked it. I mean, I think having a 18-inch minimum is good. When you drive around the waterfront at low tide and see all of these docks just sitting on the mud, you know, we can just get some kind of standard where we say, this is the minimum, folks. You got to adhere to that. And if we want to go higher over the clam flats, you know, let's go for it. But you know, just we have to establish a standard somewhere. And you know, I think we have some backup with the state people on the 18 inches. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, Peter, are you suggesting that the people who are established with their peers and not coming before us should be monitored for 18 inches? Is that what the idea is?
I'm sorry, I didn't see part of it because I get locked up. But I think what I'm saying is that, you know, any project that comes to us now, a float cannot be lower than 18 inches above the mud at low tide, period.
Well, I haven't been on this commission very long, but we haven't had anything that we have let go at below 18.
Right.
So do we have people out there that are below 18? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, and take a ride down through Danversport at low tide. You will see so many floats just sitting on the mud. You know, we permitted someone on Riverside earlier this year when I know you were part of the board, and the boat the house next door, the boat tied up to the dock at low tide is sitting right on the mud.
So what do we do about those people?
So
that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, if you have the 18-inch standard, are we going to enforce it? Or is that our responsibility, or is that the planning department's?
Yes. So that's a great question. And I will say, well, the department in general, we're doing a long-term overhaul to really inspect our waterfront and really take a good look at every lot, every pier, dock, float, what has a permit, what doesn't. As you can imagine, that's going to take a very long time. But on a case-by-case basis, to address the floats that are on the mud right now, I would say majority of those, the ones that do have active Chapter 91 license and order of conditions, you know, they've built them as they should into plan, but a lot of the times those orders say you need to maintain an 18 inches. Right. So they were required to do it, but short of us, you know, going out to each one, sending letters, which are efforts we've tried to do in the past. And with these new implementation strategies we can do for inspections, of course, this right here can't remedy all the past issues we have right now on the mud, but this is going to prevent for the future, like Peter said. But we're also going to be able to see how the corrective action works. You know, if we require an 18 inches as strictly as we're going to under these regulations, it's going to have to be achieved. And if we can see applicants doing that, and we know it can be done, now we have examples for those violators to look to and say, hey, we know it works. This is how they did it. They used helical anchors. They used pier pilings. It's you know, now that we'll have evidence to point to, I think this will definitely help the violation efforts in the future.
Okay, now there's also an indication from the state anyway that we could have the opportunity to raise that from 18 inches. But that puts us into that fuzzy area where people are saying, well, you say 18 inches and they think that's what they should do. Well, we went to the 22 and Tibbet Street said, okay, no problem, went ahead and did it. So I think, from what we've just done and moving now, it does feel like we're going backwards if we've been having these last couple of meetings where we've done the 22.
Well, I feel like 18, I think there's kind of a distinction here to be made, which is 18 is kind of what we've been asking for when it's not shellfish habitat.
Okay.
And then we've been considering more when it is shellfish habitat. So I think the ones that we've asked for more, because I mean, DMF did give guidance of 30 inches, which most people have said that's not feasible. Like the mud is too sinky. It gets, is that a word, sinky?
Sounds good.
Sorry, I'm tired. That there's been, people have said it's too much of a gap, it's unsafe, but I don't know why they're even out there if it's that muddy anyways.
Right.
I don't know why you would have to make a 30-inch step up at low tide because you'd be sunk in the mud. So anyways, I think that's kind of two things. That one is when you're not in shellfish habitat,
okay.
I think the 18 is what we're asking for. And then the question, I think, is when we are in shellfish habitat, do we want to have the discussion every time, or do we want to just put a number in here that then we don't have to have the discussion every time? We can just say, this is what's in our regs.
Well, see, that would make more sense to me. If we're doing 22 for shellfish, that we write it down and say it. Because of course, I only came in for these 22-inch discussions.
Yeah.
Anyway.
They were all, I think every time we had the discussion, it was all shellfish habitat.
Shellfish. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense to me, but to write it out, because everyone's looking at the 18 inches.
Yeah. And I think that is that's definitely applicable when it's not shellfish habitat.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there are still plenty of those as well.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
So from what I'm kind of hearing is that 18 inches non-shellfish habitat subject to the inspection requirements, and then 22 inches over shellfish habitat subject to the inspection requirements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that sounds perfect.
Feel about 22 is just so like arbitrary. I don't know. It drives me kind of nuts. I know it's kind of what we landed on, and I don't feel like we're going to get 30. I feel like every time nobody's going to commit to doing that, which I can kind of understand. And then I feel like 24 at least has more of a basis that we could justify by saying it's like halfway between 18 and 30.
Because at some point we maybe have to go to 30.
Yeah, and there obviously are situational issues with, it's not like there's probably other towns that people are putting these docks over sand or over rocks, and ours is just mud and more. So, but I know we've come up with 22 because that's kind of what we were able to get out of people. But when we're writing this down and making it permanent, codifying it, it's just super arbitrary to me.
But it makes more sense to have a differentiation between plain old mud and shellfish habitat.
I think so, in my opinion.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah.
I agree. Originally, I know we had settled on 22. I was looking for 24 before, which was sort of the midpoint.
Yeah.
Between the 18 and the 30, and somehow we ended up with 22. Before we're shellfishing as the minimum, I'd be okay with that.
Okay, Chelsea, anything to add?
Is there language in there that...
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I've got nothing. I'm just kind of like, we kind of already discussed this, the whole like 18-inch thing. I'm content with it, honestly. Because, yeah, the more I thought about it, like, no one's able to reach I don't think we've ever seen anyone meet the 30-inch thing. So, I feel like, are we proposing, like, the 22-inch for, like, identified shellfish habitat, or is it just 18 inches no matter what?
No, the 22 inches for shellfish habitat to distinguish the two.
Okay. I'm in favor of that. I like that. I think that's the best we're ever going to get is 22 inches anyway, since our riverbed is so like muddy.
Right.
And magically it's changing before our eyes.
So just to be devil's advocate here, if we're approached for what is our justification for 22, what is our justification for 22?
We heard from the clams.
Well, we got that info from the
the-
fisheries, that email that Georgia got, that they were doing a study on what the impact is, and like something interrupted them, so they weren't able to complete it. But like, I feel like 30 inches is what we kept getting from the fisheries every time it came up.
Yeah.
But no one can reach 30 inches here, so 22 is, it seems like the best we can do. And I don't know why it landed on 22 and not like 25 or 20, but at the very least, that's how I justified it. It was the closest we could get to 30 without plummeting into like 15, 10.
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe my recollection is off, but I feel like we were trying to go for that halfway point, because between like halfway between 18 and 30 is 24, but I feel like we were like, it was kind of a negotiation back and forth, and 22 was all we could get out of people. And then once we got it once, we just kind of kept going with it.
Right. That's exactly.
That was my recollection too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, what's the rationale to say, well, that 4 inches? What's the rational connection between the extra 4 inches and shellfish? I mean, how do you make it 4? Why isn't it 6? Does it have to do with the size of the shellfish, the way they gather?
Well, I think what DMF said was the higher you can get, the better. But they're not giving us at this time
the reason,
the justification that we were kind of, because they, you know, they've been recommending 30, but then we didn't really, when you asked the question again, we didn't really get that. So I think, I mean, I guess theoretically we could say that for 22, well, it's more than 18 and more is better.
Mr. Chair?
It's off the mud. Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, I do like where this discussion is going. I'm just thinking to come to well, this is all peaceful, but a peaceful resolution. Instead of putting a significant number on it right now, since DMF is still studying this, we could put in the regulations. It's 18 inches subject to an increase or discretion of the commission based on shellfish habitat, based on the study of shellfish habitat. And then in the meantime, wait to see what DMF comes up with. I don't think that's the direction you were heading, but again, Vanessa's point is well taken in that if asked, what would the justification be for the 22 or 24 or any other number basically between 18 and higher? So just a thought.
Right, based on the commission's discretion. I would think just 18 inches minimum, and we withhold the right to increase that if we felt it was appropriate.
That's sort of where I'm going. So, you know, if the shellfish habitat is clear and it's established that there is shellfish habitat, the commission could ask the applicant to investigate how high can you possibly get it, you know, given your current situation, because we know different lots and different locations are situational for the time being until DMF gets back to us.
Okay, that sounds good.
My only comment on that is I definitely feel more comfortable putting in a number that has some backing. But my only concern is what if it takes them 5 years and then we have to have the conversation 35 times?
Yeah.
Which we've already had it several. And I mean, that's okay. I just, you know,
I think people want a number.
But then if it's like a big hassle to update these later and we're not going to be able to, well, I guess we'd have to either way. If they come up with a number, we'd have to put in the new number, but maybe it's not that easy. But
it won't be as painful if going from 18 to 26, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not a hassle to update the regulations either, too. So if we want to go with a number now, that's fine. We can update these at any other scheduled public hearing. So
I guess it's just.
I'd like to go with 24 because that's sort of what we wanted before, the midway range.
Mhm.
And I think if we don't put any number in some way, it's, well, I don't know. I don't want to say arbitrary, but
It appears arbitrary.
we're picking 24. We're taking into consideration the recommendation between 18 and 30, and I think we're being reasonable. Picking in the midway.
Do you think
the 18 is the minimum?
Do you think then that it should be 24, and then if the applicant is asking to go below, they need to demonstrate why? Is that sort of?
Well, the only reasonable demonstration would be it's impossible. I can't do it.
No, I know that. I guess that's what I'm saying. They'd physically have to show on a plan that for some reason it would be impossible to do.
Can I just exert my chairmanship influence here? Can we just leave it at 18 inches for non-shellfish habitat? And let's just up, I agree with you, Mike. Let's go to 24 inches for something over the shellfish habitat. And just
put that on that too.
Okay.
And if we find down the road that we need to change it, like Dave just said, it's not that big a deal to change it. But that way we have a hard and fast number that we're all pretty much comfortable with. And we still have that 18 inches minimum where it's got to be off in the mud, which is where I really want to come from.
Okay, I'll go with 24.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, Vanessa, you comfortable with that?
Yeah, that works for me. I feel like I think the number has a little more basis to it, saying we're halfway between like not being in shellfish habitat and what DMF is asking for, that people are saying it's not practical. So we're going to go halfway between.
Okay, good. And Chelsea, you okay with all that?
Yeah, that all sounds fine.
All right. I find myself raising my voice because I don't see Chelsea's name on my bar here.
Great. Great.
Okay.
So I will work to update this section, and then I'll send that out. I'll send that out to the commission before the weekend. I'll send this whole big packet out so you guys particularly can read through that and make sure it's what the commission wanted. And then the last portion, I just wanted to, sorry if I'm making you dizzy. So our two appendices are originally our regulations. The plan and application requirements were folded into the regulation language. It was great. It definitely needed some updating. It also required the applicant to give us like 15 copies of everything, which I no longer want. There's so much paper. So we now just want 2 plans and a lot of electronic things. But so now our submittal requirements are in our appendices. Again, these can be changed at a meeting if we need to. And really what we require is standard, but I did have some interesting things I think the commission would be happy to see and kind of wanted to get your thoughts. So for our plan requirements, I've been noticing, and it's not uncommon in that, of course, there's different consultants and engineers that present plans, but it would be nice to see some consistency among plans. Tonight we had even said, what's that blue line, or what's that line marking? What does that indicate? So what I've seen in other towns do is requiring a certain color for a certain thing on the plan. Not for all the plans. Mainly, I'm hoping it would be the presentation plan. So every plan we would get from consultant A, all the plans would have the buffer lines highlighted in green, the no disturbs in red. So that was one thing we updated on the requirements, that now all our plans will have that consistency. We're hoping that would, of course, make review a bit easier for the commission members and for staff.
Hooray.
Yes.
I had a hard time looking at some of these.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So do I.
George, you've heard me say this before, and if and when we ever get back to in-person meetings, instead of having the the applicant or their consultant get up, put their drawing on an easel that none of us can really see.
Yes.
If we could somehow, I don't want to use the word force, but try to influence these people to give us something that we could display and project up on the screen.
Yeah. And I think Alicia and I and David, we actually tried to do that right before COVID. We were talking about that. So when and if we do go back to in-person, that will be the first thing.
Okay.
Because we're used to having it so close in front of us now. So I'll make sure.
It's nice now. We're still just looking on. I mean, I just have a laptop computer here, so it's not a very big screen.
No.
But just like I said, when we get back into a meeting room, it'd be nice if we could just see it projected up on a screen instead of just on that little easel.
Yeah. Well, and I could note that consultants should be prepared to provide a presentation on a bigger screen and to provide a thumb drive. Come prepared. We can add that note.
Okay, that'd be good, please.
Yeah. Hold on. Okay.
Okay, are you all set now, Georgia?
Yeah, sorry, just taking that note. So like I said, this
Georgia, I would just add that we wouldn't want to be doing that for a small project with a homeowner to have them to come in with fancy electronics and all that,
Oh yeah, no. Usually those we'll make sure.
Mike, I think it's fairly simple to just take an image, make it a PDF, and you can display the PDF up on a projector.
Right.
We have the projector, so we would be doing the.
Okay.
Yeah, but that is a good point. We'll make sure it's easy for the homeowner. All right. Well, I think we did some great work, guys. Thank you for all the feedback. That was awesome. So I'm gonna send over our 32 pages of regulations.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some boilerplate stuff in here. And again, I kind of have to update the index, but I'll make those edits that we had tonight. I'll forward that to the board before the weekend. And then our special meeting on the next Thursday on the 19th will be 7 o'clock. We'll open it like our similar hearings. And this will be the only discussion we'll have. So I don't envision it being too long. But in the meantime, if you're reading over the regs and you see something that you have a comment on or a question or an edit, email me anytime, David or Peter or I, throughout the week, and we'll update those and send them out.
Okay. I don't know about what everyone else's plans are, but my plan is once you send that, Georgia, I'm going to run over to Staples and probably spend about $10.
Oh, no. Well, I'm happy to also print it and drop it off if you want to shoot me an email, I'm happy to do that for any members.
Yeah, personally, I'd prefer to have a hard copy just because it's easier to go through.
I'm the same.
If you can print it off, yeah, that'd be even better.
Anyone else while I have you on the horn, as my mom says?
I always print out whatever, so I'm okay. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. Yeah.
All right.
I've already printed out.
Mike did his homework. He's got his.
Yeah, but now you're going to have changes, so you're going to print it all over.
Yep.
Well, the whole thing? Yeah.
No, that's
Georgia, just for a little clarification here.
Yes.
So next week, we'll just be voting on this one item, just this
Correct.
packet of regulations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and whatever changes we want to make that night, we would just have to, make handwritten notes for ourselves, and you could change it as you go along.
Yes, and I would hopefully we can there's no big changes on the last hour. I think we've covered a lot of big things. We do have a lot of attentive members that are really good with grammar. So if you do notice any of those, I'm happy to take those willingly. But I will also be reviewing it for all of that. So
okay, good.
Okay.
All right, so I guess we continue this hearing?
Yeah, so if you want to make a motion to continue to the 19th.
Well, let me just, I think we have to, before we do that, I just want to see if there's any public comments. So Dave, has anyone emailed in on this?
No emails on this item.
Or any phone calls, Alicia?
No phone calls.
Anyone else listening in feel like they need to make a comment?
Yep, Matthew Duggan here, Town Meeting Member Precinct 1. Will this new hard copy be on your website, on the planning department website, or under Concom that I can get prior to the meeting?
Yeah, so once we have it adopted, Matt, we'll have it up on the website, but I'm happy to send you the draft copy we have now.
That'd be great. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'll send that to you tomorrow.
Okay, sounds, or yeah, not, or Monday, whenever.
Okay, great,
And
thanks.
George, you
thanks.
probably should make it available if any citizen requests it to be able to send them a copy.
Yeah, so I do want to note, we did put in the legal ad that copies were available or anyone could email with questions, comments, inquiries. We didn't get any, but once it is adopted, we'll have the full new adopted bylaw and regs on the website.
Okay. All right, good. All right, so I guess we need a motion to continue this hearing to our next meeting on the 19th.
I make a motion that we continue this hearing on the regulations to the 19th of November.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a
I'll
second?
second that motion. I
Okay,
second.
just members, I'll ask you to vote yes or no. Vanessa,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
and Peter, yes. Okay, on to our next issue, agenda item is minutes. And from what I saw, there were no minutes for October 22nd on our SharePoint. So
Right.
That being said, I'll move on to, is there any old or new business we need to discuss?
No.
Okay, good. All right, I entertain a motion for adjournment, please.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting of the
Okay.
Conservation Commission.
Second.
All in favor? Vanessa,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
Ann,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
and Peter, yes. Okay, good job tonight, everybody.